He takes a flight every day, yet he never wears a seatbelt. However, this very habit, or the lack of it, would soon change his fate. A young girl was sitting beside her boyfriend, narrating a story, when suddenly, a fighter jet appeared out of nowhere and collided directly with their commercial airplane. The powerful impact tore the aircraft apart in an instant. Amidst the chaos, the girl, who wasn't wearing a seatbelt, was thrown violently as the plane shook uncontrollably. As the aircraft split into two, she found herself free-falling along with one half of the plane. In that terrifying moment, she realized the importance of a seatbelt and quickly secured herself with one of the remaining belts in the wreckage. All she could do now was entrust her fate to destiny. As the plane plummeted toward the ground, the only thing she could hope for was survival. Miraculously, the descent slowed just in time, and against all odds, she survived the crash. When she regained consciousness, she found herself in a dense forest. Although she had miraculously escaped death, a sharp fragment from the plane had pierced her lower leg. Fortunately, it hadn't hit a major artery, but the pain was excruciating. Summoning all her strength, she attempted to remove the debris from her leg. The agony was unbearable, but she knew she had to do it. With a final, desperate pull, she managed to extract the sharp object, screaming in pain before collapsing in exhaustion. After a while, she tore a strip from her dress and wrapped it around her wound to stop the bleeding. Desperately searching for her boyfriend, she called out his name, but instead of a reply, she stumbled upon another survivor. Excited, she rushed towards them, only to be horrified by the sight of the lifeless body, mutilated beyond recognition. The shock nearly caused her to faint. Overwhelmed by exhaustion and despair, she collapsed into unconsciousness. A mosquito buzzing near her ear woke her up. As she regained her senses, she heard the distant roar of a helicopter. It was a rescue team sent by the local authorities. Hope surged through her veins as she desperately limped towards the sound, using a scarf from a nearby victim to support her injured leg. She screamed for help, waving frantically. But to her utter despair, the helicopter disappeared into the horizon without noticing her. Devastated, she sank to the ground, losing all hope. But then a sudden thought struck her. If her husband was still alive, he would be searching for her. With renewed determination, she decided to search the wreckage for anything useful. However, just as she was about to move, she froze in terror. A starving tiger was prowling near the wreckage, feeding on the remains of passengers. Panic surged through her veins, and without thinking, she turned and ran. The tiger noticed her movement and immediately gave chase. She ran blindly, crashing through the dense foliage, but the tiger was gaining on her. Just when she thought all was lost, a loud explosion startled the beast, causing it to retreat momentarily. Taking advantage of the distraction, she collapsed in exhaustion. When she finally caught her breath, she realized she had to keep moving. Searching her surroundings, she found a familiar object, her husband's childhood teddy bear. Torn and tattered from the crash, tears welled up in her eyes as memories flooded back. Then, she recalled something the pilot had said before takeoff. Their flight path was meant to be a continuous journey, meaning her husband's section of the plane must have fallen nearby. Using survival knowledge she had learned from various sources, she crafted a makeshift compass using a safety pin and a leaf, allowing her to determine the north. With a determined heart, she began her journey, collecting whatever she could use along the way. Despite her injured leg, she pressed forward, drinking water from a plastic bag she had salvaged. After an exhausting trek, she reached a swamp. Knowing the dangers it posed, she cautiously moved forward, testing the ground with a stick. But despite her precautions, she suddenly found herself sinking into quicksand. Panic set in as she realized the more she struggled, the deeper she sank. Desperately scanning her surroundings, she spotted a small tree branch within reach. Mustering all her remaining strength, she grabbed hold of it and slowly pulled herself out. Though relieved, she was utterly drained and had no choice but to rest before continuing her journey. She soon reached a steep hill, but with her injured leg, climbing it was a near impossible task. Determined, she opted to crawl, slowly making her way up. However, as she reached the top, her joy was short-lived. Right in front of her stood the same tiger she had encountered earlier. Her heart pounded in terror. She had heard that if one remained still, the tiger might ignore them, so she froze in place. But this tiger was unpredictable. It suddenly turned and locked eyes with her. Knowing she had no other option, she threw away her crutch and sprinted. She was no match for the tiger's speed, but just when she thought she would be caught, she saw a pit ahead. Without hesitation, she leaped into it, landing with a painful thud. The tiger reached the edge and peered inside, but after assessing the situation, it eventually lost interest and walked away.